Chapter 26. Turncoats and Treachery Time. Day 20 post-lock location. The river line, the necropolis deck invasion, clock, T+18 hours late, on the cramped iron-plated bridge of the steam galleon. Captain Cole lowered his rifle, the smell of ozone and cordite sharp in the air. The sky outside the V-port was still lit by the silent, rolling firestorm of the F-22's strike on the necropolis. "Oh, right," Cole said, his voice a low growl. "Talk to me. Does anyone here know how to fly this goddamn—" He kicked the dead Isengrim captain's boot. "This thing?" Sparks, the Accord engineer, was already at the helm, his hands tracing the bizarre fusion of brass levers, rune-etched dials, and a surprisingly modern-looking hydraulic pressure gauge. "It's intuitive, I think, sir," said, his voice shaky. "It's a boiler. A big, magical boiler. These levers control steam pressure to the main lift paddles and the rudders. It's crude, but it's just physics. I think I can steer it. But I can't make it go without an engineer at the boiler itself." "One problem at a time," Cole said. He turned to the 4 prisoners, currently zip-tied to a steam pipe by the Rangers. "Kestrel, find out what we're dealing with." Sentinel Kestrel, his face an impassive mask of black feathers, stepped in front of the prisoners. His cobalt eyes were cold and analytic. "How many more? Where are they? Will they fight?" His voice was a smooth baritone, but it held a predatory stillness that was far more terrifying than Line's magical hum. The 2 Skanak ratmen began trembling violently. The braver of the 2, a wiry ratman with a brass cog for an earring, spoke up immediately, his voice a high-pitched squeak. "No allegiance. No, we just work. Kaldorvain, he pays. We work. You pay. We work. Or you just don't kill us. That's good too. Very good." "How many?" Kestrel repeated, unmoving. 30, Diskenuk, Coggear, chirped. 35, maybe. Mostly artillery crew. Isengrim. Loyal to Vane, yes, but not loyal enough to fight Rangers. Not loyal enough to die for a dead captain. They'll fight if we go down there," one of the Isengrim engineers finally growled, his pride stung. "They're soldiers." "But," Coggear interjected, "they are also cowards. Like us." "Kick the ship's alarm, Sentinel!" He pointed a clawed, trembling finger at a large, red, rune-etched lever. "The abandoned ship alarm! The necropolis is gone! They'll think the ship is going down! They won't fight, they'll run!" "Life skiffs are on the lower artillery deck. They'll just leave." Cole nodded, a grim smile on his face. "Do it." The Isengrim engineer, under Boren's massive, silent stare, grudgingly pulled the lever. A deep, groaning KLAXON sound, half horn, half screech, began to echo through the ship's hull. "It's done," the engineer spat. "They'll be at the skiffs in 2 minutes. But not all of them. The bridge guard, 4 of them. They're stationed in the mess, 2 decks below. They'll come running when they hear the alarm, to protect the captain." "Good," Cole said. "Let's not disappoint them. Rangers, on me. Stack on that hatch. Boren, you're the door." As the Rangers took up positions at the hatch leading down, Cole keyed his comms. "Spartan Team 2, get back to the Chinook. Report to Magister Line, and bring the Major and the wounded to the bridge. On the double." The hatch to the bridge slammed open, and Sergeant Boren, the Balugard, filled the doorway, his heavy machine gun at the ready. "They're coming," he rumbled. Cole and his Rangers took cover, their rifles trained on the iron stairwell. A moment later, 4 heavily armed Isengrim warriors, clad in the same rune-etched mail as the airport attackers, bounded up the stairs, roaring a war cry. They never saw the ambush. The narrow stairwell became a kill zone. Cole's Rangers, firing in controlled 3-round bursts, cut them down before they'd even cleared the top step. The fight was over in 4 seconds. Just as the smoke cleared, Spartan Team 2 arrived, half carrying a grim-faced, one-leaded Boone Hennessy. Line was right with them, her Volpari features taut with concern, flanked by Sparks. Boone looked at the dead Isengram soldiers piled at the bottom of the stairs, then at the captured Skanax, then at Cole, who was calmly reloading his magazine. "Hell of a way to run an airline, Captain," Boone grunted, wincing as they set him down. "We just acquired it, Major," Cole replied, not missing a beat. "Sparks, Coggear, get this thing moving. Line, get on the comms. Tell General Rhodes the cavalry just stole a horse." Chapter 27. The Core of the Necropolis. Time: Day 20 post-lock. Location: the crash site invasion. Clock: T+19 hours. From the armoured viewport of the Necropolis Bridge, Mortis Rex observed the battle on his deck, not as a commander, but as an artisan. The Alpha Grain helicopter, a fragile, spinning thing of tin, was already lifting off, smoke and vital fluids trailing from its belly. The boarding party, a collection of the Accord's finest and the 11 nations' most specialized, was in a full, panicked rout. All because of a single creation. His creation. General Bruin stood magnificent on the deck, her new cybernetic form shrugging off their parting shots. Her siege claw was slick with the Major's blood. The heroes had breached his flagship, the very heart of his power, only to be broken and sent fleeing by one soldier. Such potential, Mortis mused, his dry voice barely a whisper. To think Lord Vane was content with simple flesh and fur. He sees a soldier. I see a prototype. He watched the crippled helicopter limp away, vanishing into the smoke of the battle below. A minor nuisance. His gaze shifted south, to the Calgary Tower, his true objective. He said, turning to his skeletal adjutant, "Send the signal. The Grand Legion advances. The tower will be mine before the—" He never finished the command. The world outside the viewport did not explode. It simply ceased to be. A silent, blinding white flash vaporized the sky. The necropolis didn't just shudder, it was kicked sideways by a god's boot. An impact of such focused, kinetic fury that Mortis, a being of pure, unfeeling will, was thrown from his feet. The bridge, his sanctuary, tore itself apart. Consoles of bone and iron exploded. The shroud of unbeing, designed to dissipate 1,000 photos spells, had been saturated and shattered by 1,000,000 crude hypervelocity metal slugs from the sky. Why can we, as more and more comprehensive than this bridge? Kinetic Mortis roared, pulling himself up, the blue fire in his sockets blazing with pure, insulted fury. They dare! They dare! A second, third, and end of section 24. The second PCC. The boiler room, breached, detonated in a concussive whip that sent a tremor through the very air. The necropolis was dead, its engines silent, it was falling. Mortis looked back to the deck. Where Bruin had stood, there was now only a gaping molten crater. The F-22's main volley had struck true. He saw his creation, his masterpiece, at the very edge of the blast. The force of the explosion had lifted the multi-ton general and hurled her, tumbling and wreathed in fire, from the deck. She vanished into the darkness, a falling star of iron and rage, plunging toward the black, fast-moving waters of the Bow River far below. A disappointment, Mortis hissed. But the materials are resilient. She may yet be recyclable. The ship groaned, its hull buckling. He had seconds. He ignored the screaming, skeletal crew as they were crushed by falling support beams. He strode to the center of the bridge, to a circular, obsidian platform. This was not a command station, it was an elevator, his personal, armored lifeline. He slammed a skeletal fist onto a central rune. The platform dropped, plunging him deep into the ship's belly. He descended into the fortified core, a sphere of solid iron, wrapped around the ship's magical boiler, built to withstand the pressures of the brain lines themselves. And in its center, pulsing with a sickening green-black light, was the soul cage emitter. It was unharmed. As the ship fell, Mortis hauled a massive iron lever. A dozen 2-ton bulkheads, etched with dampening runes, slammed shut, sealing him, the emitter, and the boiler's residual power into a tomb of his own design. He was safe, but the mission was not. A flickering magical display on the bulkhead showed their trajectory. They were falling short, plunging toward the northern riverbank. A failure. No. Mortis Rex, architect of decay, would not be denied his prize. He strode to the emitter. He placed his hands not on a control, but on the pulsing, green-black heart of the device itself. He was the soul cage. It was his will. He drew the vast residual necrotic energy from the emitter and, with a final volcanic surge of will, bypassed the dead controls and forced that power directly into the ship's emergency aft thrusters. The dying necropolis, now a 100,000-ton unguided missile, got one last, terrible push. The trajectory on the screen shifted. It jumped the river. It was no longer a crash, it was a bombardment. Mortis watched the red line lock onto the Accord's defensive line, the very cluster of skyscrapers where Line's magical shield had just failed. "If I cannot take the city," he whispered, as the sound of the atmosphere screaming against the hull reached a deafening crescendo, "I will break it. Vane wanted an anchor. I shall give him a tomb." The necropolis struck the earth. Mortis Rex, sealed in his dark, iron womb, embraced the cataclysm. His armies still fighting, his emitter still pulsing, and his will, unbroken, now deep inside the enemy's heart. Chapter 28. The Long Retreat. Time. Day 20 post-lock location. The crash site invasion clock. T+19 hours. The bridge of the stolen galleon was a tense mix of exhaust, ozone, and mistrust. Adrenaline from the F-22 strike and their own desperate capture had faded, replaced by the grim reality of their situation. "I'm telling you, the main weird conduit is overloaded, Sparks," the Accord engineer argued, his voice sharp. He was covered in soot, gesturing at a mess of glowing pipes and copper wiring. "If we try to draw full power for the lift paddles, you'll melt the entire array." "Melt, yes, bad," Coggear, the Scannock, chattered, his nose twitching, but melt slow. "Better than crash fast. The pressure rooms are stable now. We must divert steam from boilers, then bleed word conduit. Yes?" The two were nose to nose, surrounded by the other Scannock and Accord engineers, all frantically trying to make sense of the hybrid control system. Guarding them was Sentinel Kestrel. He stood with his arms crossed, his cobalt eyes fixed on Coggear. He didn't trust the Rat Man's sudden, cheerful cooperation. Few feet away, his two sentinels, Cygnus and Rook, stood watch over the two remaining Isengrim prisoners, who were bound and slumped against a bulkhead, radiating sullen, silent hatred. Captain Cole, his face a mask of grime, looked at the chaotic scene. "Sparks, just make it fly." "Boring," he called to the massive Balagard. "Any more loyalists below decks?" "None." Boring rumbled from the stairwell hatch, wiping his glomtit. The rest jumped ship and the alarm sounded. "We are alone. This ship is ours." "Good. Then let's use it," one of the Rangers said, checking his ammo. "The army's still fighting down there. We've got a flying battleship." "Let's get back in the fight." "Absolutely not," Line snapped. Her voice was thin with exhaustion, but sharp as glass. She was kneeling on the deck, checking the word stasis on Boone's mangled leg. "We are in a crippled, stolen ship we barely understand. Boone needs a surgeon, not another firefight. Our mission is over." "Our mission is to win," the Ranger countered. "And Mortis is still in that wreck. Then we win by being smart." Cole cut in, silencing the argument. "We're blind up here. I need a sitrep." He strode to the galleon's comms room, a device Kestrel had jury-rigged to their Accord frequency. "General Rhodes, this is Spartan. Do you copy? What's your status?" The reply was a burst of static, gunfire, and General Rhodes's voice, strained to the breaking point. "Spartan, Thank God. We are in full retreat. The necropolis, it fell on our side of the river. God, Cole, it obliterated the entire defensive line. The bridge, the buildings, my armor, all gone. A cold silence fell on the bridge. Cole's knuckles whitened. General, report your position. We're falling back south. The city's lost. Rhodes's voice was heavy with defeat. The undead horde it's still coming. Unchecked. We're trying to form a new line at Fish Creek Park. It's the last defensible position before the highway, and we must hold it to get the last civilians out. Cole looked at the bridge crew, at Sparks and Colbier, at Boone, who was grimacing in pain but still holding his rifle. Solid copy, General, Cole said, his voice hardening into pure command. We're on our way. We are in a captured Shadow-Grasp galleon, call-signed Spartan. Do not shoot us down. We are en route to your position at Fish Creek. He turned to the pilot's chair. Sparks, Colbier, get this thing moving south. Slow and steady. Kestrel, get your sentinels on the deck. I want eyes on that wreckage. The last thing we need is Mortis climbing out of it. Be keyed his mic again. General Rhodes, we are heavy and slow, but our deck is wide. We're a flying medevac platform. Get your most critical wounded ready for transport, and have a medical team standing by for Major Hennessy. We're coming in. Chapter 29. The New Necropolis Time. Day 20 post-lock. Location: the crash site invasion clock. T+19 hours. The reinforced, rune-etched iron of the necropolis's core was never designed to crash. It was a citadel, a fortress of the sky, and now it was a tomb, half buried in the shattered remains of a downtown Calgary office building. Mortis Rex, architect of decay, was unharmed, but his fury was a physical force. He stood in the wreckage of his command bridge, the air crackling with his silent, icy rage. Around him, damage reports flashed on the few remaining crystal displays, a litany of catastrophic failures. Hull integrity, 9%. A disembodied magical voice droned. Main boiler, offline. Steam paddles destroyed. Shroud emitters, critical failure. Failure! Failure! Mortis's voice, usually a dry rasp, was a shrieking roar. He seized a surviving, multi-tongue obsidian console and, with a burst of pure telekinetic rage, hurled it through the main viewport, where it smashed into the concrete rubble outside. Insects! Ants! He howled, the blue light in his sockets flaring with manic, violent energy. They strike at me with their crude, kinetic toys. They topple my fortress with speed and metal. This is an insult. He stalked through the wreckage, his tattered robes kicking up dust and pulverized glass. His entire plan, his perfect, meticulous siege, was now a smoking ruin. He was grounded. He was trapped on their side of the battle line. They believe they have won, he hissed, his skeletal fingers curling. They believe this is a victory. He stopped in the center of the ruined bridge, his gaze turning inward. Even now, he could feel the Accord forces beginning to rally at his fallen flagship. He could feel the elation of the mortals on the stolen galleon. No, this is not a defeat. This is an inconvenience. He raised his bony hands. If they wish for me to fight from the ground, he began, then I shall make this entire city my new necropolis. He drew in a deep, shuddering breath of weird energy. Primary shroud, Raynite, he commanded. He slammed his palms onto the deck. A wave of immense, dark green energy, drawn from his own personal reserves, pulsed outward. Outside, the Accord soldiers who were cautiously approaching the wreckage were thrown back as a shimmering dark green dome of energy flickered to life. It enveloped the entire crash site, a half-kilometer bubble of pure necrotic defense. The necropolis was shielded once more. The spell cost him, draining his immediate reserves, but he was far from finished. His fury demanded a greater, more permanent answer. "You have cost me my ship," he snarled at the city beyond his shield. "Now, you will pay for it with your planet." He stalked to the core of the bridge, where the soul cage emitter, battered but intact, pulsed with its steady green light. It was powerful, but its range was limited. He needed more. He raised his hands again, his eyes closing as he reached out, not to the city, but north. Miles away, in the conversion refineries of Edmonton, his loyal, lower-tier necromancers were dutifully managing the anchor. Each of them wore a circlet, a gift from their master, a gift with a fail-safe. "You have served your purpose," Mortis whispered. He clenched his fists. In Edmonton, a dozen necromancers screamed as their circlets flared, their bodies dissolving into dust as their every drop of magical essence was siphoned away in an instant. The stolen power, a torrent of raw, terrified mana, flooded into Mortis. He roared as he channeled the vortex, directing all of it, all of their lives, all of their power, directly into the soul cage emitter. The machine shrieked, the green light flared, pushing past its limits, and the emitter exploded with power. The necrotic field, no longer a localized bubble, swelled. It washed over the river, over the Accord's new defensive line at Fish Creek, over the southern suburbs. It didn't stop until it had enveloped the entire sprawling city of Calgary, from its northernmost perimeter to its southern border. In the north, at the abandoned airport, the corpses of the Alberta Guard and the Eisengrim warriors, left behind by the battle, rose. Within the city's morgues, the dead began to stir. In its cemeteries, the ground shifted. A new citywide army was being born, all of it marching south to reinforce the horde already at the river. Mortis Rex stood in the pulsing green heart of his new fortress, his body trembling from the massive expenditure of energy. The spell was done. The entire city was now his engine of war. "Now, you ants," he rasped, sinking to one knee as the overwhelming exhaustion finally hit him. "You will see the folly of your defiance. I will corrupt this forsaken land. I will raise every speck of its dust against you, and I will take this world for my own." He leaned back against a shattered throne, the blue light in his sockets dimming. He would rest. He would recover. The enhanced shield and his new city-wide army of the dead would buy him all the time he needed. Chapter 30. The Beached Whale Time. Day 20 post-lock. Location: Fish Creek Park invasion. Clock: T+20 hours. The field at Fish Creek Park was a snapshot of a failed state. Exhausted Accord soldiers, their faces black with soot, were forming a ragged perimeter, while APCs and civilian trucks tried to organize a mass evacuation south. General Rhodes stood on a ridge, binoculars pressed to his eyes, watching the northern horizon. The city was a dark, silent skyline, crowned by the smoking, half-buried ruin of the necropolis. The battle felt over. Then, an unfamiliar shadow blotted out the stars. "Contact!" a soldier screamed, swinging a javelin launcher onto his shoulder. "Hostile! Hostile! It's one of them!" Rhodes looked up, and his blood ran cold. A massive shadow grass galleon, smoking, listing badly to port, and shedding pieces of its iron hull, was descending directly on top of them. "Hold your fire!" Rhodes bellowed, his voice cracking. He recognized the call sign scrawled in white paint on its side. Espartan. "That's Cole! Hold your fire!" The stolen ship didn't land, it fell. Sparks in Coggear, fighting a control system that was actively melting, managed to cut the last of the steam pedals just before impact. The iron behemoth slammed into the frozen earth of the park, skidding for 100 meters before groaning to a halt, a beached whale of black iron. It was a ruin, but it was intact. The main ramp slammed down. Captain Cole stood silhouetted in the opening, his rifle in hand. He didn't come down. He yelled up to the command post. "Medic! I need a medical team on this deck! Now!" Rhodes didn't hesitate. "Doc, with me." He yelled to his chief medical officer. Grabbing a trauma kit, Rhodes, the doc, and 2 corpsmen sprinted across the field and up the heavy iron ramp. The deck of the galleon was a scene of controlled chaos. Rangers and Accord engineers were already forming a defensive perimeter along the ship's railing. In the center, Line knelt over a body, her hands glowing with an icy blue word energy. Rhodes saw the casualty and his heart sank. It was Major. Boone was pale, his face slick with sweat, his ruined leg a grotesque collage of shredded fatigues and dark blood. "What? What is that?" the doc asked, his voice shaking as he stared at the glowing word stasis Line was holding. "A plug," Line said, her voice strained, never looking up. "It's not a repair. It's holding his artery closed and blocking the nerves. But it's failing. He needs a surgeon general, not a corpsman." Rhodes looked at the mangled leg, then at the vast open deck of the galleon. He saw the other wounded from Cole's team being treated. His mind, trained for logistics, decided in a split second. He keyed his command mic, his voice cutting through the panic of the evacuation. "All unit leaders, this is Rhodes. The Spartan is our new command post. I want the entire field hospital moved onto this ship. Get the generators, get the plasma, get every medic you have. This is the hospital now." He turned back to the doc. "Get your people, you're working here. Start bringing the critically wounded from the field aboard. We're turning this thing into a medevac platform." "Yes, sir." The doc and his team sprang into action, turning the iron deck into a triage center. Modes finally let himself breathe, clapping Cole on the shoulder. "Captain, you did it. You broke their flagship. You ended the siege. We held them." A heavy, profound silence fell over the deck, broken only by the new orders to move the wounded. The battle was over. Sentinel Kestrel, who had been standing silently on the ship's bow, suddenly dropped to a crouch, his cobalt eyes fixed on the northern skyline. "No," Kestrel said, his voice a low, terrible whisper. "He did not end it." "What do you mean?" Cole asked, turning to the Sentinel. Line 2 had risen. She finished her work on Boone, handing him over to the doc, and now stood staring at the city with an expression of pure, academic horror. "The air," Line hissed, her voice trembling. "The word. It's wrong. The field didn't die with the ship." A communications tech, who had run onto the ship with Rhodes, stumbled over, his face pale in the glow of his console. "General, sir, I'm getting reports. From everywhere. The airport, the perimeter, the downtown morgue, even the old military cemetery at Carey Barracks." "What reports, soldier?" Rhodes demanded, his stomach tightening. They're rising, sir. All of them. Not just the battle dead. All of them. The entire city. The necrotic field, it just expanded. It's covering everything." Rhodes looked from the tech to Line, his mind refusing to process the words. Line met his gaze, her yellow eyes wide with a terrifying new understanding. "He didn't crash," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He planted. He didn't lose his fortress. He made a new one. The necropolis. It's not the ship, General. It's the city." Rhodes stared north at the silent, corrupted skyline. His victory was a catastrophic, city-wide rout. They hadn't won. They had nearly survived the opening salvo. He turned back to the chaos of his new, makeshift hospital ship. "Get us out of here," he said, his voice flat. "Sparks! Coggear! Can this ship fly?" Sparks, covered in soot, ran to the railing and looked down at the shredded landing paddles. "Fly? No, sir. The main boiler's cracked and the lift paddles are shredded. We're not flying anywhere." No, not fly." "Coggear," the Scannock chattered, his nose twitching as he pointed to the aft steam vents. Not fast, but limp. Yes, limp. The aft thrusters. The steam lines are good. We patch the boiler, yes? Use your welder machine from the APC. Patch, patch. Ugly, yes, very ugly. But it will push. We can limp south. Slow, but we limp. Sparks's eyes widened. He translated. He's right, General. It'll be the ugliest thing in the sky. We can't go high, we can't go fast. But if your engineers give us every torch and scrap of metal they have, we can get this barge airborne, just barely. It'll take maybe 20 minutes. 20 minutes, Rhodes repeated, looking north at the city that was now, itself, an army. You have 10. He turned, his face a mask of grim resolve, and keyed his command mic. All Accord elements, this is Rhodes. The city is lost. I repeat, the city is lost. We are holding this position at Fish Creek for 10 minutes to get the winded airborne. After that, we're pulling back, all the way. Okotoks, High River. It doesn't matter. We are abandoning Calgary. Blow the bridges, blow the highways. I want this entire sector declared a dead zone. He turned back to his new grim command team, standing on the deck of their broken, stolen iron fortress. The long, desperate, losing war had just begun. Cross Current 6. The Accidental Anchor. Time, Day 21 post-lock. Location, the Citadel of Silence. Hub Earth. The center storm. The chamber was a void given form, its walls carved from solidified shadow. At its center, a swirling vortex of black liquid energy served as a scrying pool, its surface rippling with the final, desperate scenes from Calgary. A figure, tall and indistinct, watched the pool. It was Lord Zarthus, the architect of decay. His form was less a body and more a collection of ancient, tattered robes and swirling, entropic shadows. He watched the tiny, frantic figures of the Accord retreat south. He watched the Spartan limp away from Fish Creek Park. And he watched, with a deep, unsettling amusement, as Mortis Rex's final, spiteful spell solidified, casting a dome of putrid, green-black energy over the entire city. A dry, rasping sound, like the skittering of 1,000 dead leaves, echoed in the chamber. It was a chuckle. The Ent, Zarthus mused, his voice a layered whisper. The little lich. He threw his tantrum. He broke his toys, lost his fleet, and in a final petulant rage, he thinks he has won. Zarthus watched the scrying image of Mortis, exhausted and kneeling within his new, grounded fortress. He plays with necromancy. Zarthus scoffed, the word tasting like ash. A crude, messy art, the reanimation of flesh, a parlor trick. Zarthus leaned closer to the pool, his shadowy hand hovering over the image of Mortis's domain. In his arrogance, he has given me a gift. Mortis's spell was a brute force application of necrotic power. It was a massive, festering wound in the fabric of the alpha brain, a phylactery of corrupted life force. But Zarthus was the master of entropy, of the slow, fundamental unmaking of reality itself. He has tilled the soil, Zarthus whispered, a note of genuine pleasure in his voice. He has created a massive localized dead zone, a beacon of negative energy perfectly attuned to my own. Zarthus extended one long, shadowy finger. He did not pour his power into the pool. He simply touched it. Single, impossibly thin thread of pure black energy, the color of a dead star, leaked from his fingertip. It spiraled down into the image of Mortis's green-black dome. It did not disrupt the spell. It did not change it, it joined it. Deep within the corrupted city, a single molecule of concrete at the base of the necropolis wreckage didn't just die. It ceased to be. And the molecules next to it followed. A microscopic, silent, invisible decay had begun, anchored by Mortis's crude spell. Let the ant have his corpse city. Let him play king, Zarthus mused, pulling his hand back. It will take time, of course. Years, perhaps decades. The connection is made. My true decay, the slow, perfect unmaking of his own, has found purchase in their world. He turned from the scrying pool, the image of Calgary fading. He has given it to me, gift-wrapped.